I need to leave it cracked a little bit, so
Oh, yeah.
please don't worry, they're rolling.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, that,
30-some years, but I am, yeah, finally decided. That with my kids are older, happy spots, when we did 10 years ago, and trying to. I think that would be.
really?
Good evening, everyone. I forget what it's here today. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. I know we have a couple of guests this evening. If we can put you on the spot.
Okay, my name is John Pratt. I'm the interim COO for the district. Been here about 5 months, learning a lot from all these great staff members, and just came to get a feel for what's going on this side of the house. Kelly's board normally, but I think all this finance stuff is important to it, so I came to kind of get a feel for what's going on.
Okay, first order of business is going to be the approval of the minutes of our last meeting. Is everybody in? Yes.
I make a motion to approve the last two meetings minutes.
Okay, that's right, yes, because we did table the minutes of the meeting prior. Right?
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? So moved. Not members of the public? Would you like to speak to the committee about anything?
I would, yes.
Absolutely. We have a 3-minute time limit.
Okay.
Right, to the members.
We gotta come up there, or?
Nope, right there is perfect.
Okay. Sorry,
Oh,
I'll start the old time. So, I'm Curtis Colbert. I've been a Lee County resident majority of the time for the last 20 plus years. My company is Simplified Insurance Solutions, and I've been attending the insurance task force meetings since January to see if there's any opportunity to help the district reduce healthcare spend. And have since been asked to attend this meeting today by the board members. So in those meetings, unfortunately, there's been a lot of discussion lately about cost shifting. And that's like co-pays, deductibles, co-insurance, and out-of-pocket maximums, and those are all on the table for April 1st. Unfortunately, those go directly, taken out of the teacher's pocket. So we've got that. We've got, down the road, possibly higher taxes, millage rates, and pain on the backs of the teachers to combat these unsustainable costs, that are going to continue to go up. So I'm part of Health Rosetta. We're 100 members or so across the country. We collaborate for best practices in reducing healthcare spend. We all share ideas, even though we're competitors in a lot of markets. So I brought to the attention of several board members a contract that the Osceola County School District has currently with one of my Health Rosetta colleagues. And we can piggyback off of this contract without going through the laborious RFP process and allow the district to save approximately, in the first year, approximately $15 million on healthcare costs, and then 30 years the following off of, based on today's dollars. So we can extrapolate that over the next, decade. See, that's a lot of money for the county and for teachers to put that money back in the classroom. So I brought the case study for the group that's working with Osceola County. They are, if anybody's been to Orlando, you've seen Rosen Hotels. So Rosen Care, they've done a ton for their community, and it's all because of the way they've structured their healthcare costs. So I can share that for the record, their case study. So we can build a community solution over the lifetime for students K through 12, 13 years. That's approaching probably $500 million of money going back to the classroom over their lifetime. So this has to be accomplished with an aggressive, actively managed plan. Right now, it's kind of passive. So active management, as business members of the community, would you rather pay for something with an arbitrary discount off an arbitrary number or a cost plus? Everybody wants that cost plus because you know what that is. So it's been said that with size comes greater discounts. Here to tell you that's an absolute myth. With knowledge comes greater discounts. So we help members get to the best care, and that best care is always going to be lower than the worst care. So they're going to have better outcomes in terms of the costs. So 2 of the Vision 2020 goals were increasing recruitment and retention of effective and highly effective employees and become a model of continuous improvement organization. So a status quo healthcare plan doesn't meet that criteria. So I ask you to follow up with Osceola County and in turn set the standard for care in Lee County.
Okay.
Thank you.
No other members of the public? Chris?
Well, it's summer, so I don't have tons to report, except that it's not really summer anymore, because we're back to school. I think back to school was very, very successful. I think that transportation was very, very difficult on day one because we had massive thunderstorms across the county, and that pushed off release times for students. We can't let our kids go outside and get on the bus when there's lightning and thunder. So that pushed off release times, which pushed off some bus times. Plus, the first day of school is always chaotic and hectic and all of that. But the second day was much more smooth, and then every day that week when I got my text, it was earlier and earlier every day that every student had been delivered safely. So that first day of school for me, the first year I was on the board, I didn't know that that was a really scary day, and then I was waiting for a text from the superintendent telling me that every student had been delivered safely. But since that first year, that's what I do all day. I have that like terrible feeling in my stomach, just waiting for that text to know that all students have been delivered safely. I think one of the things that we lose sight of is all of the excitement surrounding the first day of school. We do that every day, every single day. We get kids to and from school safely, and we educate them, and we try to have excitement in the classrooms, and we support our teachers, and we try to make families happy. And that gets lost the other 179 days of the year, if that makes sense. So I just want us to try to sort of think about that. And I don't really have all that much more to report. A lot of what we're doing right now is very routine as we get back into the school year. So I'd like to take questions if anybody has any. Please.
At our last meeting, I met with the woman for grant.
Yes.
Did you ever pursue anything with what we were recommending and discussing at that meeting? And if so, where are we at this point? I did reach out to her, like I said I would, but I was wondering where you were at.
Yeah, that's in process. The superintendent is doing whatever he does with staff, and then he'll come to the board and say, we got this recommendation, and yes, we agree for these reasons, or no, we don't agree for these reasons. So he's in the process of working on that with staff to come to the board. So we have a very specific process in place whenever a recommendation comes out of a committee, and we're going through that process as we speak.
Any questions?
Are there any other changes with the legislature that's affecting us from this last session?
You know, it's funny you
At the
say
beginning of
that.
the year?
It's funny you say that because the Florida School Boards Association is considering adding 2 platform items. Well, it's really one combined platform item. Some of the safety and security initiatives that were adopted by the legislature this year include a database for student information. And there's some concern that the collecting of the information could be unconstitutional, it could violate student safety rights. Student privacy rights. So that's one piece. The other piece is, I'm sure you know, last year, the legislature required schools to have In God We Trust placed someplace prominently in all school buildings. And there's concern that obviously is, obvious concern there is that that's unconstitutional. So the FSBA wants to add a platform item that if we are sued because we're implementing laws that you have required us to implement, that they pay for the defense of those suits and that we be held harmless. So it's been proposed by other school boards across the country with regard to the In God We Trust thing. And I don't know yet whether FSBA is going to adopt it, but what we did as a school district with 7069 was we said, this is unconstitutional and we're suing you. And, you know, as a person with a law degree, I get that. We have 3 branches of government, and when you feel as if one of the branches has overreached, that's what the courts are there for. It's not personal, it's not I don't like you, it's we just don't agree with the constitutionality, so let the courts do their job. But it wasn't necessarily received that way. It was taken a little bit more personally than it was ever intended. So I think we're taking a different approach here, which is we're not going to sue you and say it's unconstitutional, but instead, will you please pay for it when the ultimate or when the inevitable happens and we're sued for it. Does that make sense? So we're trying to take a more friendly approach to not being responsible for implementing unconstitutional legislation. If that makes sense.
John?
So I have a question on that. And this is before getting into the legal side of that. So if you don't implement it and the state comes down and there's funding, then you do have a right to sue because they ask you to do an unconstitutional thing. You can't do what you perceive as the law, and there's a difference of opinion.
I would think so. That would be a question for either the board or the staff attorney. I would think so. But again, we're trying to avoid that. We're trying to avoid you told us to and we're not going to, we're trying to avoid the confrontational approach and take a more friendly word.
Well, I understand we're trying to avoid the confrontational approach, but we're running head on into a constitutional issue. And I mean, do we as a district really want to do that?
This isn't a district thing. This is a Florida School Boards Association thing. So this is more of a state thing than a,
But
this
if we
is
do
something we
it,
discussed as a board.
but if we do it, are we not the people that would be sued? Are we not
Yeah.
the district that
Yeah.
would be sued?
We have a district that would be sued.
I don't understand. Which is costlier? I mean, we're in a finance advisory committee and I think being proactive would be better than reactive. And the reaction is going to cost a lot more than the proaction.
Are you saying so don't do it? Don't close the garbage trucks, or even though they've been told to, is that what you're saying?
If they're given an unlawful order, I mean, you can not, well, usually you cannot, even in the military, if it's unlawful, you can.
But it is, I mean, I looked at I just pulled a bill out of my wallet and it's still on my money. So until the federal government gets sued and it comes off our money, I'm fairly certain that we're not gonna get sued for that, or you can pass it up to the federal government. It still puts it on our money, on every dollar bill, and, you know, so that's the part that seems odd to me.
I think there was a lawsuit filed in South Dakota. I think this was as a result, I think we didn't just get it from out of nowhere. I think the lawsuit was filed, and so we're responding because a similar statute was passed before. So, I mean, anybody can sue anybody for anything, right? And so what you're saying makes absolute sense, but money and the education arena are two different things. So I know that, you know, free exercise of religion and that's treated differently in an education arena than it would be treated with public currency. There are different rulings from the court on those two things.
I think getting where we turn, because I saw in Collier County on the news this morning, there's a debate whether or not teachers should be able to post their opinions on Facebook. And it's going on, and we're becoming a very litigious society. I know Lee County, and I saw it on the news today, are only being sued by a parent of a young man who died on a football field. So we're always going to be exposed to some type of litigation. If the state is mandated that we put "In God We Trust" in our classrooms, I think it's up to the state to tell us, remove it from the classrooms. Because we've also been going round and round on this committee for at least a year on the school classroom sizes. Because we're trying to abide by state guidelines. Even though it's killing us financially, we're trying to abide by every state mandate that they come down with. I don't see why we're suddenly drawing the line on this one particular area. We could have a parent coming in and saying, my child's grades would have been higher had the classrooms been larger because they thrive more in a larger classroom setting than when they're one of 2 or 3 children in a class. You get somebody's going to sue you basically for everything. And I don't like the knee-jerk reaction that we're going through.
Yeah, and I do feel like the FSBA has us covered on this. I don't know that we as a district have to do anything because they have us covered. But the other, you talked about money and finance advisory. You all saw that Governor DeSantis was at the county yesterday, I think. How much was it? Another 2.7 billion more of a relief? Does anyone know the number? And I've already sent the question to the superintendent asking what portion of that will be coming to the district. Because we obviously had expenses associated with removal of debris, and I think that's where most of the money is going. But I should have that information for you by the next meeting.
Any other questions of Chris? Okay, I'd like to welcome our guests for the evening.
Hello.
I think I'm set.
Oh, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bonnie McFarland. I'm the Director of Insurance and Benefits for the school district, and I'm very happy to be here. I've prepared kind of a brief kind of who we are and what we do, and then I'm happy to take any questions that you may have. So just to get started, the Insurance and Benefits Department oversees kind of 3 general areas. We handle what I call district insurance, which I'll explain a little bit more in a minute. Employee insurance, which is your good old-fashioned medical, dental, vision, and also the employee wellness program. So what is district insurance? District insurance is our property insurance, casualty, which is also called liability insurance, and workers' compensation. So just real quick, I'm sure you guys are familiar with most of this data, but just to give you an idea, we have about 83,000 non-charter school students. The number obviously is more in the 90s if you include charter schools, but for purposes of insurance, we're only looking at students who are registered at a traditional Lee County School District school. We have over 13,000 employees of all different sizes and shapes, meaning full-time, part-time, temporary, contract, et cetera. The school district owns buildings in over 100 locations. We have more than 1,000 buildings, of which of those 159 are in what the federal government designates as a special flood hazard zone, you know, like barrier islands and places like that. And so those are overseen by the NFIP, which is the National Insurance Flood Program. Our buildings and contents have an approximate value of $2.265 billion. That is a replacement value, so for those of you who are the accounting folks who are looking at the depreciated number, it's not going to match. Those are 2 different numbers. If you're familiar with that, you'll understand that's the replacement value of those buildings. And we have approximately 1,000 buses and 500 what we call other autos. You also sometimes traditionally will hear the bus fleet. The buses referred to as yellow fleet, and the other ones referred to as white fleet, because the other ones are usually white cars, vans, trucks, etc. So bottom line, there's a lot of stuff. We purchase a variety of different types of insurance that cover all of those different things. We purchase property insurance, which covers our buildings, our contents, as well as a terrorism policy. We purchase the flood insurance, as I mentioned, for NFIP on 159 of our over 1,000 buildings. We purchase auto general employment practices and fuel tank liability. We have workers' compensation insurance. We have catastrophic student accident insurance, which is a requirement of the FHSAA in order to have sports. We also have cyber liability and crime insurance. Crime insurance it stands in the place of the bonding that is required. The crime insurance, you can do either or. So that's the district that has the crime insurance policy. We also have what we call managed but purchased by program funds. So the medical professional liabilities for our academies. South Fort Myers High School does have a boat, and we have an ocean marine policy that they pay for that covers the boat. And then we do oversee the voluntary student accident insurance policies that are available to students or for parents to purchase on students. Those policies are fantastic. The least expensive one is $8 a year in premium, and that provides coverage during the school time. And then the most expensive one of those is less than $100 for the entire year to provide that voluntary student accident policy. So we communicate out to the schools. Unfortunately, it goes out at the beginning of the school year. For those of you who are parents, you know, you walk away from open house with that pack. In there is one of these applications. So we try to educate also during the sporting meetings and that sort of thing that this policy is available. It does provide up to $25,000 of accident coverage for students, and it's a great deal for parents to purchase. On the employee insurance side, we have medical, dental, vision, life, legal plan, accident insurance, cancer insurance, critical illness, disability, flex spending accounts, health savings accounts, and 403Bs and 457s. Those are all of the different insurances that are offered to employees. In terms of district paid insurance, the current contribution per enrolled employee per year is $7,360.80. That works out to $306.70 per pay period. And then the district does provide each employee a $20,000 life insurance policy that works out to $43.20 per year. All other insurances are elected and paid for by the employees through payroll deductions. Where appropriate, those are pre-tax, which saves the district and employees taxes on the income that's paid. I don't know who was first.
I was just gonna ask, the 7,400 cap, the employees, is it, or is that
You mean the 7360?
Yeah.
It's it's what's called board contribution, so that's what the board puts forward.
Right.
And then whatever the employee elects, the employee would pay the
any
difference.
specialty insurances on top of the base?
Well, that amount currently covers 3 of our 4 insurance plans that are offered at the employee-only level. So if the employee were to elect dependent coverage on any of the plans, or if they were to elect the highest plan, they would have some contribution above that.
So is that number something that you guys are contracting through an outside insurance company?
No, that is the money that the board is putting on a per-person basis towards the district's health fund,
Self-insured?
self-insured,
So
on the
you're
medical,
self-insured?
on the medical, yes.
Okay, so just as a question, because I'd heard this before, and that was actually why we requested to have you here
Okay,
specifically. So have you done comparative costs?
I'm getting there.
Okay. Make sure we didn't breeze by it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I did tell her what your questions were the last time so that she could.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Bonnie.
Yeah.
Going back to medical.
Uh-huh.
And I'm trying to get clarification. It says per employee per year. Is that an average cost?
No, that is the amount, so as an employee, full-time, there's some eligibility rules, you have to work at least 30 hours a week, et cetera. But if you're eligible, as an employee, the board puts, and actually we do it on a pay period basis, but it makes a little more sense in an advisory committee to kind of talk annually. So as an employee, I receive $306.70 per pay period towards the insurance that I elect. That is added onto my paycheck as a board contribution. Then my insurance, whatever I elect, is then deducted off of my insurance. So if I currently have, let's say the 5773 plan that the district offers, those 2 numbers equal, so my net cost is 0. If I have the 3769, which is the richer plan, remember I said there's a total of 4 plans, 3 of them are at or below the current contribution. The 4th plan is a richer plan, so it's a buy-up plan. It's a little over $30 a month. I think it's 35, although it may be like 34 or change. So then the board would put forward the 306.70. The cost of the insurance I elected would be, $341.70, and I would pay the $35.
No, I understand that. What I'm getting at is the teacher has a spouse who has coverage for the family. They don't need our insurance.
Right.
Obviously, they're not getting that in their paycheck.
No, they would
So
have to elect.
what pool was that money now going into? Because you've now allocated based on the, whatever total number of teachers there are in the school, which you said about 13,000.
There's 13,000
employees.
total employees. There's about 11,000 employees who have medical insurance through the district.
Okay,
Of
so
32,000, is that what you?
No, of 13,000.
13,000.
Yeah, the 13,000 number is kind of everybody, contract workers, part-time, full-time. So of those, about 11,000 employees are benefit eligible, meaning they're eligible for the medical. The money, and I'll defer to Kelly a little bit on the mechanics, but the money for that medical insurance comes from wherever the pay for that employee comes from. So if my position's paid out of the general fund, then my board contribution would come out of the general fund. If my position was paid from a grant, then my medical insurance would pay from the grant. But the money only goes into the plan if the employee is enrolled. So if the employee is not enrolled, then that money would stay wherever that person's funding comes from, whether it's a grant or the general fund. Did I say all that right too? Okay.
So if an employee waives their insurance because their spouse has a better plan for them to be on, keep the money in the fund where the employee works rather than sending it to the self-insurance fund to cover it. Because there's nothing to cover, so they keep it in the.
And this money that's being provided to the employee, I'm assuming is pre-tax? Since it's gonna be netted against their insurance premium, how is that I'm just trying to understand why are we doing it this way as opposed to giving every employee $7,360.80 additional in annual salary and allow them to apply it towards their healthcare costs.
Well, it's because there's a requirement to provide health insurance, and so we can't just give it to them and then them not have health insurance, then we're on the hook and we'll get penalized.
So under the PPACA, we're what's considered a large employer, under the Patient Portability and Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare or Trump Care or whatever federal government wants to call it these days, we're an eligible large employer, which means we are required under that law to do one of two things. We either have to provide health coverage that is, has minimum essential benefits and meets a cost threshold, it can't cost too much to the employee, or we have to pay a penalty for not offering that insurance.
How much is the penalty?
Right now, if we were to pay the penalty on all of our employees, it'd be about $27 million.
$3,000 per employee that buys off the market.
And it's, well, no, because you have an individual penalty and then you have a, what I call the nuclear penalty.
Yes,
Thank you. So the individual penalty is assessed based on anybody who who meets the federal requirement to have insurance but is not offered insurance by the district. There's very, very few of those. I think, actually, I don't think we've paid that penalty at all. I think the few that have come to us have been people who we have offered the insurance, they've declined it. We're only required to offer it, we can't force people to take insurance. But we, when employees enroll, they either have to enroll or opt out, and if they don't opt out, they're defaulted into a health plan. So we have hardly paid, I don't think any, of the individual penalty. What I'm referring to at the $27 million is if you fall below a certain threshold of offering coverage, and right now it's 95% of your eligible employees, then you trigger the entity-wide penalty, which at last calculation was around $27 million for the district for the number of employees who are eligible.
What percentage are we at right now of full-time employees that use it?
That are enrolled or that have been offered? Those are two different questions. So
Enrolled.
Enrolled, we're probably in like the 98, 90, high 90s, but keep in mind, under the law, our only requirement is offering.
Okay, well, that's the point. What incentive is there for someone not to take it? Zero. And what would happen if you gave them the money as a cafeteria plan and then the option to get insurance elsewhere, use that money for that? Is there something different about the school district from a regular company?
No, in that respect, no. The cafeteria benefit, if we were to move to a cafeteria plan, that money would be taxable. So the employee, because if you can't give it to the employee and then let them go buy insurance. So the pre-taxability of the health insurance is a result of them being covered under Section 125 health plan. And so they would have to buy it on a group platform. If we were to just give them the money would become
It would mean
taxable.
if they do purchase the healthcare from you, that would be tax deductible at that point.
Right, yes,
So
yes.
it's fine, so they pay tax, I think the income, they pay tax on it, it's money in their pocket. If they don't, they get the tax deductible healthcare coverage under the cafeteria plan.
Then they're paying post-tax.
But I mean, then there's an incentive for them, you might not have, I don't know if you want more or less to enroll, but if people can keep some part of the money, there would be probably an incentive for them to look for cheaper healthcare coverage.
Well, employees do have the option to opt out, and there's some, I didn't go into all that because I was going a different way with our discussion, but there is an option for people to opt out. If they opt out, they do receive $25 per check towards the other benefits, so like dental vision and that sort of thing.
Premium, they also have the opportunity to let down.
Yes.
It's not just here and up, there's also an opportunity to less.
There's one plan currently that's at that rate, and then there's two plans that are less expensive than the more contribution, that's all right. Yes.
But they don't keep the difference. The employee doesn't get the difference.
They do, but so there's two ways they can get the difference. So let's say you elect the least expensive plan. There's roughly about $35 left in that plan as well. Then you could use that $35 two ways. You could either elect dental or elect dependent care coverage, so if you have dependents, then that would reduce the cost that you pay for your dependent care. If you didn't have dependent care, you could spend that $35 on other pre-tax benefits like dental or vision, that sort of thing. So you don't really give it up, unless you then choose, again, not to take free insurance, which would be silly.
Hi, how many pay periods are there a year for an employee?
For the vast majority of employees, roughly 9,000 to 10,000 of our employees are on a 24 pay period cycle.
Okay.
Bus drivers are on and a few other people are on a 20 pay period cycle, but we true those 20 pay period cycle people up. So in a year time, the employees on the 24 pay and the employees on the 20 pay get the same value in terms of dollars contributed. And also the same deductions.
Okay.
But if you take a 24 check person and a 20 check person, their checks don't look the same because you're doing it on a different timeline, but at the end of the year, they've all gotten the same amount of money.
So that 7360 figure, just so I understand, that's an amount the board sets aside that they're gonna pay per employee. It does not matter how many employees enroll or don't enroll?
Correct, it's that much on a per employee enrolled
How
per
much
year.
has that amount, could you show us how much that amount has fluctuated over the past, like, say, 5 years?
The 73, I can get you that information,
Okay.
yes. It was 63.72 for a very long time.
Okay.
And over the past several years, we have fluctuated up, I believe about the last 4 or 5 years, 4 or 5 years. It's been stepping up, little by little to this amount. That amount is bargained, it's part of the collective bargaining agreements with the Talc and Spout, and for those of you who are familiar with collective bargaining, benefits is a mandatory item of collective bargaining, so that amount is bargained with the unions as part of their overall salary package.
Is part of the negotiating, like, say, okay, the premiums are going up, so the board's gonna offer a little more money this year, or maybe we have less people enrolled, so the board can up their individual contribution, or does it fluctuate on how many people take the?
Obviously the total cost would, but the cost per employee does not.
Okay.
What's since you're self-insured,
Uh-huh.
if you take all the money, the 7,400, and add it all up, where do you wind up at the end of the year, under, over? Because it's not gonna match exactly.
Your
If I-
costs,
If I
you
have
say
a
your
member that's out, he's just
Right.
gonna brush his teeth.
Okay, so this is referring to the money that the district puts
Right.
towards the health plan. So employees who elect dependent coverage or employees who elect a plan that's more expensive than the board contribution are also putting money into the plan. So because we're self-insured, our goal is for those two things to equal. We have an actuary who assists us with those calculations every year, and our goal is to equal that. Because we're a self-insured plan under the state of Florida, we are required to keep 60 days of expected claims in reserve, which we have more than an adequate amount in reserve for that. And then we are required to file what's called a 11208 report every year with the state of Florida in terms of our 3-year projection as to where our spend is going to be based on kind of what we know at the time that 11208 report is processed.
But if I took actual versus collections, what's the net? Plus minus in any given year. You collect $10 million.
Right.
But you have to pay Lee Health, so much more, so much less. What is the variance there?
So I can get you that information on a year-by-year basis. Obviously, when we are planning for the year, our goal is always to break even. There have been years in the past where we've done better than that. There have been years in the past where we have done worse than we projected. And that's part of that reserve that has to be kept is to kind of be a buffer for years where we don't do as well as we project. But it hasn't been the variance hasn't been huge. Well, I wouldn't say not material, because I think it is. And we true it up at the end of every year. But it hasn't been wildly fluctuating, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's kind of within a margin of what we would expect it to be.
Would you say for the majority, like the last 5 years, would you say that 4 of those 5, you brought in that 7360 or the 6372, whatever the number was enough, and you had more money at the end of the year, or you had less money needed? we're just trying to get a, maybe it's within 5%, but are you short every year or are you over every year at the end of the year?
I would say in the past 5 years, I would have to go look to answer that question with 100% fidelity, but I would say it's an even split, which I know it can't be on a 5-year basis because it has to be 3 and 2, but it's been pretty consistent. We are running into some challenges with this year, and some of that is more about that we've changed the way we funded the plan, which again was bargained with our collective bargaining units, because we used to, last year we were funding based on eligible, and then we've switched back to being funding based on enrolled. So that did swing the funding a little bit. And so we're kind of living out the change of that right now. But it's something we look at every month. We do have insurance task force meetings. It's a committee of 16 folks, 4 from our TALC union, 4 from our SPALC union, and 8 from what are called superintendent record folks. That's people like me. Ms. Fisher is the board liaison to that committee. And we do review the funding of the plan every month to see where we are, not only as of that month within the plan year, but also based on the year so far, where is our new projection at the end of the year. And so far those numbers have been good. I would like to move forward because I kind of want to answer the rest of your question, and I think the next 2 slides will help that, which is where are we? The short answer is we are behind our competitors in and how we fund our health program. And in terms of do I think we fund enough, Ms. Patrick, if you don't mind, I'll say something that you said, which is everybody's underpaid. I heard you say this at one of the board meetings. Our teachers are underpaid, everybody's underpaid, and our health fund is unfortunately underfunded compared to our competitors. So one of the things I was asked to do is that benchmark data. So, and I do apologize, this orange and yellow looks better on my screen than it does on the projection, but Lee County is the 5th bar in, and you can see across the bottom I have the numbers. So these are other districts around the state. I did include Charlotte and Collier, in terms of that, and you can see our funding on a per employee per year basis is significantly below some of our competitors and slightly below some of our other competitors. That one Palm Beach number that's sticking out there, Palm Beach took an interesting tact with the federal healthcare law. They actually implemented a 60% plan, which is the minimum that you can offer, and that's their minimum plan. So I would kind of say, while it's there, and I felt like not presenting it was not being truthful because they do have a plan that costs that little. That plan is 20% below the average of our plans in terms of benefits being offered to employees. So it's not really the other plans are a lot more comparable in terms of benefits to that particular plan.
Would this depend on the cost of healthcare in those jurisdictions?
It would, except I'll point to Charlotte, which is right next door. Their low plan is a little over $7,000, and their high plan, they're funding at $9,659. So they're in pretty much the same healthcare market we are. Yes, larger municipalities with multiple healthcare systems do pay less for the care that they get. When you have a single payer hospital system, it makes life more challenging from a financial standpoint because you can't just not have Lee Health in your health plan. Whereas if you're in Miami and you decide you don't want to have Baptist, then you just don't, and everybody goes to another hospital because there's other options. So it does make things, it's a little easier in a larger metropolitan area than it is in a smaller area.
Dave and then John.
Are we comparing apples to apples? Are all of these private like you or are some of these, I know there are other districts. My question is, are they public or are they privately funded? Or are they,
Do you mean self-funded or fully
self-funded?
insured?
Yes,
Okay,
that's what I
okay.
mean. Or have they gone out with a private company? That's what I'm trying to understand.
The majority of these are self-funded. I know for a fact Miami-Dade is, Broward is, Palm Beach is, Pinellas is. The other ones I can't say for sure whether they're fully insured or self-insured. The interesting thing with fully insured and self-insured is it's just a matter of who owns the risk. So generally you pay more to have a fully insured benefit because you're transferring the risk. Somebody else is taking the risk, and to do that, they're going to take a premium for it. So in terms of paying for what we actually use. Self-funded is our claim, we try to make our claims and our administration costs match our premiums. There's no margin in that, like would be in a fully insured, where there's a margin allowed for the risk that's been transferred.
Just a question, who administers, negotiates with the health fund rates or?
So we have what's called an administrative services agreement with Aetna.
Okay.
So,
I'm
and,
done, I know who it is.
okay, and that
Know them
was,
well.
that was secured through the RFP process.
I have one question. I think what would be beneficial, at least for my purposes, is we're seeing the amount of money that we're allocating towards health benefits for our employees. I think an additional line that would be beneficial is where their average salaries fall as well. Because we may be comparing apples to oranges and saying, okay, yeah, we're on the lower end as far as contribution, but we might be mid-range as far as salaries. And when you combine the full package that we're offering out, we may not be as bad as this diagram is presenting us.
So I know my Gatewood would have that data. It's not data I have.
Yeah, the other thing that plays a big part into it, if you look at some of these counties like Charlotte and Collier and stuff, they also have an operational millage that they have gone out for and received. So they have more general fund dollars to help fund this type of a thing, as well as salaries for their employees.
So my question is, so if the county's paying more toward each employee, does that mean they have a richer health plan? Is that what that means? I mean, or does it mean that their healthcare costs are higher in that county and so have to pay more?
So I think the answer would be their healthcare, they spend more per employee on healthcare because they're paying more into the plan. So, but why is that's a good
I
question.
mean,
It could be two
because they
things.
have an older population with more women, and so they have to pay more in to cover the cost. There's three different moving parts here, right?
Right, yes. And so, obviously, in a chart like this, that level of detail isn't captured in terms
I
of
don't see
why.
it as that useful information with those three moving parts.
Where
on
does
it.
Hillsborough fall in there?
I was not able to get Hillsborough's data. I can tell you that school districts in general and us as well in terms of demographic skew heavy to female populations. Our average age for Lee County is 48, which is higher than a lot of folks in the area. We tend to have very long-serving employees, and that does play into kind of the wellness piece of trying to keep people healthy, because it's not just about the dollars that we're spending today, but working towards reducing the dollars we're gonna spend tomorrow, and in our world, the tomorrow, I mean, we have employees who've been with us 40 and 45 years, so, you know, we wanna keep those folks healthy going into the future, which is part of the wellness component. I do want us to go to the next slide if you'll indulge me for a minute, because I know talent, this is obviously comparing school districts to school districts, and when you're talking about educational folks or instructional folks, that is about half of our population. I don't know if this happens to the other folks who work for the district, but when I tell people I work for the school district, they ask where I teach, because they assume everybody who works for the school district teaches. We have a lot of people who do a lot of other stuff. We have IT folks, we have people who drive buses, we have finance people and benefits people and all kinds of other folks that do other things in the school district besides teach kids. So comparing ourselves to the other governmental entities in Lee County, it actually looks worse. Lee County on this, our Lee Schools is the left bar in terms of the per employee amount spent. The next two are Lee County. Lee County government does a differential between the employee-only coverage and if you elect family coverage. So the employee-only level is $10,380. If you elect family coverage at Lee County, it's $18,360. The city of Cape Coral does a single contribution, much like we do. Their contribution amount is $10,400 per employee. And the city of Fort Myers also does a split contribution. If you only elect employee coverage, it's $9,501. And if you elect family coverage, it's almost $23,000 a year.
So if it's a Lee County family, just so I'm trying to understand the slide, are you saying that the difference between the $18,360 and the $10,380 is paid by the county? Or
Yes, sir.
Okay, so but for us, we're saying that if somebody picks a dependent plan, that they cover all of that out of pocket, correct?
Correct. Yes.
I
penalizes families.
That was, yeah, that's what I was
Penalized
getting to,
families.
the families are penalized, because I was looking at this a few weeks ago with my wife, and had our kids on, it was $300 and some per pay period. Now, you can feasibly go through the state of Florida on Healthy Kids and pay the full price, which I believe is $210 a month, for as many kids as you have, for all of them. That's a savings of over $400 and some, about $450 when it all breaks down. Why is it so expensive to add, I'm not even saying the spouse on, I'm just saying the kids on? That's a lot of money.
So the point you're making is that us as taxpayers are paying taxes. And Lee County said, oh, we're gonna use your taxes to cover families and pay for them. But we're not gonna use them to cover families that work for the school district and pay for them. Is that the point here?
I'm not going to
What's
speculate
the
as to what the
18,000?
thinking
What's the
process of another governmental entity is. This is just what is being contributed.
But where's it going?
Because I hear a lot of like what you said. Well, if I go work for how come the county's insurance is so cheap? It's only $180 to put my whole family on. Well, it costs the employee $180, but that's because the county is picking up. It's not that their plan is less expensive. If you look at the total cost of the plan side by side, we're at a couple $100 in one another across this spectrum right here in terms of what family coverage costs in totality. Where the rubber meets the road is how much is the employee paying for that insurance? Because that Lee County family that's paying $180, I think I'm not sure if it's a month or a check, so I don't want to misspeak. That 18,000, if we were to go buy their coverage, with our contribution rate, our employees wouldn't pay what their employees are paying. It's because of the differential and again, what is being paid is negotiated with the union. So, I don't have the independent authority to say, well, we're just gonna do this differently. We have the insurance task force, we have the bargaining unit. The bargaining unit determines the money that's available. The insurance task force reviews the plans that are available and makes plan selections and hears from the actuary. So we certainly bring forward different proposals and ideas for change, and that's part of what the insurance task force looks at, is well, what if we did this way, and what if we did this type of a plan, and what if we funded it this way? And the challenge with that, of course, is anytime you change something, there's gonna be people who gain from that change and people who don't. And so we have looked at different funding. We've looked at different dollars. One of the challenges I think we have as an entity is, and we say this a lot in bargaining, it's all one pot. It's all one pot of money. So, people say, oh, well, but we should have more money over here. Okay, then that money has to come from somewhere, because if the pot is allocated at 100% and you want to make this piece of the pie bigger, then one of the other pieces of the pie has to get smaller, because the pot of money is the pot of money.
Yeah, I don't know how to ask this question, so you just have to kind of help me out and understand what I'm asking. So a lot of times people will get into kind of a mode of this is the way we've always done it, or this is the way that we do it. So you guys self-insure. What do you call the other solution?
Fully insured.
Fully insured, okay.
Yes.
Let me ask you this. In the last 5 years, have you guys looked outside of self-insuring and looked at the possibility of fully insuring at any time in the last 5 years, just as an example?
Okay, so not in the last 5 years. Our current contract with Aetna is a 422 contract that we took out to bid. Aetna became our provider in 2015. We were fully insured in the 2000s, the O's. I don't remember exactly, I think it was 03, 04, 05, might have been 04, 05, 06. We did put an RFP on the street, and Blue Cross Blue Shield made us an offer we couldn't refuse, trying to buy the business. So we took the deal. When the 3-year contract was up and they wanted to raise our rates 40%, we went back to being self-insured. So do we look at ways to do things differently? Yes, I would say yes. I meet with people on a regular basis about doing things differently. I have other folks in other school districts that I work with, like if there's an interesting solution that somebody has come up with, we collaborate together to do that. The challenge, as I mentioned earlier with switching to fully insured, is that you're then paying to shift the risk. And part of our wellness program, if I can hop over there for just a minute, because that's the next couple slides, is we do have a wellness program. We don't have one just so we can say we have one, you know, kind of like that hotel that says they have a gym and you go down there, there's 2 broken pieces of equipment, but they call it the gym. That's great and all if that's what you want, but we take our wellness program really seriously from a risk mitigation standpoint. So we evaluate data from our claims. Claims data, keeping in mind, are things that have happened. So somebody's already gone to the doctor because they got something. And then we also take data from our health screening. So our health screening looks at biometric data, blood sugar, blood pressure, body mass index, and those sorts of things to help predict people who are potentially headed towards a claim. They may not have a claim today, but because of the risk factors that are presenting, they may have a claim. We target our wellness program towards our high prevalence and high cost areas. So we target after the risk factors that we're seeing in places where the district's claims are out of sync with like Aetna's book of business. So one of the areas we're focusing on, or actually one of the areas that we focused on in the past was mammograms, because we were below kind of national averages and book of business with our provider and the number of mammograms. So we are now above book of business in that, and that screening, obviously, if you can catch something early, can save a lot of dollars in the health plan. Our new target for this year is around colorectal screenings, because that is an area where we are seeing a lot of high cost, and we are below average on people who are receiving screenings. So we're working on improving that screening to hopefully catch things early. And we also screen all of our programs for ROI. So it's actually funny, we looked at a program over the summer. We had some folks participate. The folks who participated, we had great outcomes with, but we had such a high dropout rate from the program that the ROI on the program wasn't good. And we had that conversation with the vendor. We said, we're not buying any more of your product, because this is supposed to be a you said it, and it's an online program. I can bore you about all the details, but we basically told the vendor, we're not buying any more licenses for this program because the ROI on it on a net basis isn't good. Yeah, for the folks who completed the program, it's great, but your completion rate and how you're keeping employees engaged is so bad that it's offsetting the good that the people who complete the program did. And so now we're actually working with the vendor to improve his program. It's kind of funny, we say we should get consultant fees for that, because we said we're not buying any more of it. We did a 50-person pilot just to kind of see how people liked it, and what were the results, and did we get ROI? And the ROI is measured in different ways for different programs, but it's usually some sort of a biometric data. So did we see a reduction in blood sugar, or did we see a reduction in weight? Did we see whatever the program's targeting that we're trying to do? So we do require an ROI on all the programs that we offer. We offer a wide variety of things. We do our annual health screenings, as I mentioned. We also are incentivizing annual physicals with physicians. We want folks to get in front of doctors. The bottom line is that less than half of our employees were getting an annual physical. And so we're encouraging and incentivizing employees to do that. We have exercise nutrition classes, smoking cessation classes, financial wellness classes. We offer, I put flu vaccines, but we actually offer a wider variety of that. Not everybody's eligible for all the vaccines, so the flu is the one that we incentivize. And employees, and when I say incentivize, we do incentivize for participation in these programs, again, based on the ROI of the program. So a program with higher ROI is going to have a higher incentive. And then some of our programs, which are quite pricey, you may have heard of the CHIP program. It's the Complete Health Improvement Program. We do offer that to employees. It's a disease reversal program. It's a pretty amazing program if you've ever been a part of it. But because of the expense of that program, the employees have to pre-qualify into the program. They can't just take it because they want it. And then they also have to sign a commitment form that if they don't complete the program, that they'll reimburse the district for the cost of the programs. And I think we've had to collect from like 3 people, which is great, because we put hundreds of people through the program. And it had some amazing results. We had one lady who lost over 100 pounds on the program. We have another mom who's one of our teachers, got her 2 kids off of all of their ADHD medication, and collectively the family lost over 100 pounds, the 4 of them did. So we have some really great success stories out of our wellness program. You were asking about trend. We did have 5 years of either flat or negative trend. You guys are financial people, so just in case, negative trend is a good thing. It means you're paying less today and it was on a per person basis, so this is not on an aggregate basis, it's on a per employee enrolled basis, that we were spending less than the year before based on some of the savings that were generated as a result of plan design and our wellness program. And I think you may have heard we got the Blue Zone Award, and our estimated savings over that 5-year period was over $120 million based on the money not spent. So I just wanted to go through those. I'll go back up to any of this data that you guys are interested in talking about. I'm happy to answer any questions.
John?
So is health insurance the only thing you're self-insured in, or are you self-insured for workers' comp as well?
So it's a little bit different on the district side. We have what's called self-insured retention, and then we have reinsurance. So if you're not familiar with healthcare, with insurance, the best way I can explain that is it's kind of like a big deductible. So we have a big chunk under our self-insured retention, or what's called self-insured retention, that we own.
You're insured for everything.
And then, correct, but on a reinsurance basis. So we would pay those claims and then submit the claim to the carrier to get reimbursed. So yeah, so it's reinsurance now.
And your reinsurance kicks in when?
It's different for different levels of coverage. So we're on the district side insurance, we're self-insured on most of the items up there. So property insurance is self-insured, work comp is self-insured. The NFIP is not. We do have a deductible on that, but it's an actual insurance policy through the NFIP. We have self-insured retention as well on the liability. And it's different for different ones.
And do they offer ordinance and statute protection?
So you mean, are we protected by sovereign immunity under 76828? Yes. We're a governmental entity in Florida, so that extends to us as well. Yeah.
I don't remember if you put it up. Where's the big cost? Property and casualty versus health? I mean, what is the total insurance cost?
So total, off the top of my head, I don't know that I could give you a total insurance cost, because to me that would be the insurance that we buy plus the claims that we pay under the retention. And right now I don't have that data just at my fingertips. In terms of what's more expensive, the district insurance or the health insurance?
Well, like is property and casualty 20% of the total cost, or 50% in terms of?
When you say total?
I mean cost is like what we are, cost of claims. We try to match the claims cost with the premiums, right? So you're 76, what he's saying is you're 7360 per employee for health, right? Mm-hmm. So is health 80% of the total of your 100% of insurance costs? Is that what you're saying, right? Yeah. I mean, where's the big number of the savings to be found? I mean,
well, so in my world, I treat the district insurance as one type and the medical as a different. They're different funds. They're different everything. So I would have to go look at the numbers to answer your question with fidelity, because I don't ever look at them as a total bucket. I always look at the district insurance as a bucket and the health insurance as a bucket.
We didn't talk much about property and casualty.
Yeah.
We talked much about health. Is that because health is like 90% of the cost?
Health is a big component of it, yes. But you also have to realize that on the district insurance, and the reason I'm not comfortable in even kind of guessing at a number is we have other costs that don't necessarily run through the insurance that are created by like the self-insured portion. So for example, property insurance. So it happens, people run into an awning at a school and we have to get that fixed. Well, our maintenance team probably is gonna go out and fix that. So that cost is not in my insurance cost, even though that would be an insurance, that's why I'm just not comfortable saying, giving you a number or a percent, because I think I'd have to work with Kelly and her team to make sure we were including all the costs to give you a number with fidelity. But with the, is the health insurance larger than the property? The answer is yes. Where are the savings? Here's kind of the tricky part with the health insurance. Approximately 3.5% of our employees spend approximately 55% of our medical spend. So when we do our wellness programs, we look at people who, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Some of it is the increased cost. We've become I use this example quite often because it's me and my family, and I feel like I can, whether it's hip or not. She passed away a long time ago, so I don't know that it even counts anymore. But my great-grandmother died of a kidney infection in the 30s. You probably wouldn't miss work for that infection now. As medical medicine advances, the cost of that medicine continues to increase. And we are now getting into a world where we have genetic therapies. I don't know if you saw the news, this was not our claim. I saw it on the news, so it's public information. But there was a family who's trying to get a $2.6 million genetic infusion for a child in another state, so it's not anybody, if you're on another financial committee in Lee County, it's not a Lee County claim. But those types of treatments are out there, and the federal healthcare reform removed, I don't know if you remember health insurance even 10 years ago, you used to have, which most people never paid any attention to because if you're healthy, it doesn't matter, and if you're not, it really does. But most plans used to start with that lifetime maximum, right? There was a number at the very top of that benefit schedule that said how much you paid if you went to the hospital and everywhere else. The number at the very top was always your lifetime maximum. And when I started in insurance 20 years ago, that lifetime maximum was $1 million. And then it went to $5 million, and then it went away. So part of the challenge is the care that we're able to provide people has become so sophisticated, but it all comes with a cost as well. So how are we trying to target and how are we trying to control this cost? A couple different ways. Aetna has programs for the folks who have what we call comorbidities, which basically means they're sick in a lot of different ways. They got a lot of stuff going on, and trying to work with those doctors and those hospitals to coordinate care and get the best care possible to manage those complex medical cases, which are the most expensive. Then from a population standpoint, we're working with our wellness program to get people to be as healthy as possible. I think I put it up there, although maybe not, the EAP program to help people deal with kind of what I call life. You know, life happens, you know, and sometimes we need help dealing with that. One of the reasons we offer financial wellness is, you know, that's a big stressor and can take up a lot of people's time. And time, unfortunately, that sometimes lands, if it's not directly during their work, it's at least eating up their concentration as they're trying to work, if they're not having to take time away from work to go deal with whatever that is. So we're kind of trying to come at it a lot of different ways. And we're struggling with the same things from a healthcare standpoint that the entire country is struggling with a healthcare standpoint. And the cost of healthcare is going up. We're all getting older. You know, as we get older, we consume more health insurance. I told you earlier, our average age is 48 years old. Several jobs ago, I worked for a tech company. If you want to see a great group of folks to buy insurance on, go try to buy insurance on a bunch of 20-year-old men. They're cheap. 20-year-old women, not so much because they have babies, and those get to be expensive. And so, you know, all of that plays into the cost of the care. And you know, you don't have to do anything but turn on the news to know that everybody's trying to tackle these healthcare concerns. So we are constantly looking at what's out there, and then following our procedures within our procurement to, you know, take things to bid. And when we take things to bid, we usually put into the contract, you know, this is kind of what we're looking for, but then give entities the opportunity to propose something different, so that they're not always, like, they can kind of get an idea of what we're looking for. But if they're like, hey, you didn't ask for this, but we've got this fantastic option over here that we want to talk about, we write that into our RFP so that we can obtain that information.
So I know that you do work with Lee Health, since they're really the only healthcare provider. If they do a procedure, let's say that they do a CAT scan on someone, and that same patient goes in for another CAT scan in 2 months, are they reimbursed for that or not? Because the old type of insurance, we would cover procedures instead of quality of care.
Right.
And I know that Lee Health is moving more towards quality of care.
Yes, they are.
And did they write that into our contract, or?
So we contract with Aetna, who contracts with Lee Health. So in terms of, we don't have a contract directly with Lee Health. We have that through Aetna. In terms of whether or not a procedure would be paid for, I'm going to give you the lawyer answer, but it's also a medical answer. It depends. And the reason it depends is, why are they now getting that second procedure? Was there another intervening event that required that second procedure? Did something happen that would make that second procedure legitimate? Or is this just because the guy didn't look to see if they had one done 2 months ago? And I would say that's why I say it depends.
Right.
Because if it's a repeat for the same reason, I would have to talk to Edna about whether it would be paid, but I would say it shouldn't be.
Or rehospitalization is, because hospitalization is obviously the largest cost of healthcare.
It is a significant cost driver, but there's also a big push within the medical field to put more things onto ancillary care. I don't know if you're familiar with the bill that went through the Senate or went through the Florida legislature. Freestanding facilities could not keep people overnight. That's why outpatient, you had to leave the same day. They're trying to allow outpatient facilities to keep people, I think the rule was for 23 hours, not 24, but 23. And because they're trying to push more of that care out of the hospital and into ancillary facilities. And so we are seeing a lot of that movement. We're also seeing a lot of specialty medications. There is I'm sure if you watch television, you've seen all the advertisements for Hep C. It's not a coincidence that there is a company out there who has a Hep C vaccine that they would love to give anybody who wants it to the tune of $80,000 a vaccine. And so that's why you're seeing all the ads, not because somebody all of a sudden decided maybe Hep C was a big deal, we should all know about it, but because now we have a vaccine, we're gonna charge you $80,000 a pop for it. And so we want everybody to go get tested so we can sell as much of this vaccine as we can. So it is, hospital is a significant driver, of course, because that's where your most complicated medical situations are, but there's other cost drivers in healthcare that are out there that we're watching and working to address those issues.
David, and then Ring.
So, I saw all the slides. My question is, why not look at fully funded versus self-funded options anytime in the past 5 years? It just seems that it would be appropriate due diligence every year to do comparison shopping. So, hey, you mentioned 2003 to 2006, Blue Cross Blue Shield made you an offer you couldn't refuse. So I can't see any negative for either the district or employees of the district to be covered by Blue Cross Blue Shield during that time. If you were able to offload that risk to somebody else, they covered that risk, you guys got it for less, why wouldn't you continue every year to look at that, go, here's our cost projections, here's our wellness program, it's super good, we've got all this data that we can give to a company. That's what they do. Like, I don't understand why it wouldn't be at the highest of priorities to be able to say, I mean, the numbers you gave me, if you have 13,000 employees, 11,000 are full-time, 98% are covered, that's like 10,800 people. At 7360, that's over 79 million a year. If 3.5% of the employees are 55% of your insurance costs, that's $44 million on just those 3.5% of people. So if we couldn't get a better deal by offloading into a fully funded program, why aren't we looking at that every year? It just seems, from a financial outsider standpoint, like ludicrous. But again, I don't understand it, so that's why I'm trying to understand it.
Okay, so there's a couple reasons why, and we certainly could, work with procurement. I don't know if you've ever been part of an RFP process, but especially with medical, you get the RFP that gets turned in is about a 4-inch binder, and and companies want a longer term contract. I'm not saying long, like decades long, but several years. If we were to take every one of our insurance lines out to bid every year, what would eventually happen is our insurance companies would stop bidding. Because it's a lot of work on them to do the work, to bid the product. It's a different ballgame in public sector than it is in private sector. I worked in private sector benefits for 10 years. And when I went to work for public sector, I was like, I have to do a what? An RFP, I have to get a committee, I have to write a specification. Because when I was in private sector, I had a broker and I'm like, this is what we want, and this is how we want it, and this is how, this is the kind of plan we want, and we want to be fully insured, we want to be self-insured. And the broker went back and he said, here's your 6 options, which one do you like best? Well, can I get this one with this, with that? And we just bought it. But in the public sector, you have to write specifications in writing. Your companies have to respond to those specifications in writing. We call together a committee to review all of the RFP responses that have been provided. We make recommendations as to the ones that we want to put up forward as finalists. finalists interview, and then we contract. And that process alone, we start in April for the next April with that process, for every insurance. And so with the, can we? It's a matter of resources and so this is all the insurances that we have. Every single one of those is a different RFP. And if we were to take every single one of those to bid every year, quite honestly, I would need more staff.
When's the last time you did an RFP for insurance?
So we do them on a rotational basis. So the medical was last bid in 14 and they started 4/1 of 15. And so they're coming up for their first renewal. Their initial contract was for, I think I said 4 years before, I think it was 5 years. And then we have an option of 2 additional 2-year renewals.
This is for the administrative process?
This is for the administrative part of the medical.
Full coverage.
Yeah, you're saying with that,
administrative.
Yes.
When's the last time an RFP was done to see if someone would take the risk and take full coverage?
So when we did, that was the last time we did a medical RFP.
2014?
Was in 2014 for the ASO for
What's ASO?
Administrative Services
So we're
Agreement.
not talking about administrative services, we're talking about full coverage, like the 2004 example.
you said 2003 to 2006, is that the last time that was looked at as a possibility? When you went and took it back over in 2006, just assuming
Well,
that
I
was.
didn't, but it was taken back over,
When it was
yes.
taken back over, has that, to Ken's question, that's what we're asking, has it been looked at again, fully funded option, RFP put out on medical, outside of the ASO agreement, that's not what we're asking about, the fully funded insurance.
Well, if you have a fully funded plan, then they're gonna administer the plan. So whether or not you're fully insured or self-insured goes with who's administering the plan.
Okay, so you're saying that at the end of the period of time in 2020, before you go to the 2 more year option with Aetna, you could put out an RFP at that point and have it away from Aetna and have somebody fully.
Well, Aetna would, okay, so there's only really 5 insurance companies left in the United States who bid on large. So even if we were to put that out, you say away from Aetna, but Aetna could obviously bid on that because Aetna offers full.
I just meant, I wasn't trying to talk about the ASO, is what I meant. At the end of the ASO, so assuming what, a year from now, because it's a 5-year
Well,
plan?
the original we bid in 14 for 15, so we would have to bid in 19 for 20.
The question is just when's the last time an RFP was put out for full coverage for health insurance?
To be fully insured
Yes.
on medical.
Yes, that's what
Very
we've been
simple
asking
question.
over and over, yeah.
Okay,
Very simple question.
I apologize, I'm trying to answer the question, I'm apparently not doing a very good job, but that's not my goal. So administration of the plan is tied to whether it's fully insured or self-insured. So the last time we put a medical RFP on the street was 2014 to take over administration in 2015.
So
But in
it's,
2014,
But we're still
you go out and
self-insured.
say, this
Well,
would be the
that was-
cost of
that's not-
self-insured.
No,
This would
we
be the
We don't know
bid,
that. We don't know that.
okay,
That's what they're.
yeah, we bid an ASO contract.
So when was the last time we did a fully insured contract?
I don't have the.
That's what we're asking, that's what we're asking.
Okay, I'm so sorry, I didn't understand what you were
So
asking.
why?
Why, yeah, why? Because it's hard, I mean, we know it's hard, I get it, I get that part of it. But if it hasn't been done in, call it 13 years now, assuming 2006.
So these are all in a cycle, and they all cycle separately. So it's not that we haven't bid insurance, a bigger picture of insurance.
Right.
We've been bidding other things as they have come due to be bid.
Sure.
And so we've been bidding other insurances.
Maybe we're too
Could be.
simple, but you said, remember, we must be. You said, we did out a 2003 and they bought the business and we saved 40%. And it was fantastic, but then, whatever you say, and then they raised their rates 40% at the end of the contract. Okay, so we went back to self-insurance. So why not bid it out again to see if somebody else wants to buy the business? Are we missing something?
I'm speculating here, I don't work for Blue Cross and I wasn't here in 2003. But the reason an insurance company would underbid the business is to get you to move in hopes that you'll stay. You're not gonna get an insurance company to take a loss, 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 which is what Blue Cross did from 2003 to 2005 on that loss. And the challenge with, one of the challenges with bidding everything every year, even assuming we could, is the stability for the employees in terms of knowing where their benefits are coming from. You know, if this year it's Blue Cross, and next year it's Aetna, and then it's Cigna, and then it's this, and employees are having to pick, oh, here's the new plans this year, here's all of your benefits, and all the plans are new this year, go do open enrollment. There's a lot of churn that gets created with employees, and so, yes, the price is important, and I agree with you completely, but employees knowing what their benefits are and having some stability around that, and having fully insured plans has allowed us to change ASO providers and keep plans the same, so employees have the same types of insurances that they had, or the same co-pays from one ASO to another ASO. So it is about more than just the money.
We don't even know the price. We have no idea, do we, what it might be?
Well, anybody who's gonna bid on the business is gonna want a claims run. And they're gonna know that the claims run is this much. And they're gonna give it to their actuaries, who are gonna project out, okay, if it's this much for the last 3 years, then it's gonna be this much next year, this much next year, this much the year after that. And so we're gonna collect this much premium in that amount of time to cover our expected claims. So if an insurance company is not trying to undercut and buy the business, you're gonna pay more for those claims under a fully insured scenario.
Why not buy the business for 3 years and then recycle that? What it is? Why not let somebody buy it even though there's.
Well, there's no guarantee they will.
Right. But then.
We can certainly put the next, we can certainly put the next RFP on the street saying bid it fully insured or self-insured, but the self-insured, if they're covering the claims that they're going to be incurring, the fully insured one is gonna be more expensive.
We'll let them come back to us and say, it's gonna be that.
We
rather than
certainly can-
us
we
make
can
the
certainly take it to
determination
bid.
for them.
Do you have a slide that shows what our employees are paying out of pocket on an average for a spouse or dependents?
I did not include that here because I was focusing on the district costs. I do have that with me though.
And when you have a minute, I'd like to hear what your background is. Are you from the insurance sector or health? You seem pretty knowledgeable in
Oh, thank you.
healthcare, so I'd like just to know what your background is. And I'll just offer this comment. The teachers I run into and district employees, I hear a lot of talk about how they wish they had access to like gym membership discounts. I know you guys spend a lot of money to put the gym here, but that's out of the way for a lot of people that live in Cape and Lehigh. So I'd love to see us be able to offer our employees, a discount at like a big chain gym or something.
Okay, so let me, I'll kind of start with me. So I'm sorry, it was a little weird. So I actually went to school for a degree in human resources. I started taking college classes in HR and fell in love with it. Kind of wonder what was wrong with me, but I did. I've been in HR my whole career. I was a recruiter for a while for a major telco company, and then, as you guys all know, telecommunications in the 90s went through what I call merger mania. I sat at the same desk and worked for 4 different companies in 2 years. It was quite interesting. And then relocated down here in Fort Myers. I was the director of human resources for a technology company here in the area, a small company. When I started with them, they were about a little over 100 people, maybe 125. When I left, it was almost 300 people. They've since been bought out and they're not here anymore. And my favorite part of all of HR was insurance. I said, I must have a screw loose. I remember when Nancy Graham was a superintendent, she's like, oh my God, I'm so glad you love this stuff, it makes my head hurt. And I said, well, good, because I do, I love it, and so let me do this insurance stuff, because I think it's fantastic. So when I left the Director of Human Resources job, I went to work for the City of Cape Coral. I was there about 7.5, 8 years. Similar in the array of benefits, governmental entity. It was my first government job after working in private sector for about a decade. It is definitely challenging to work in public sector. If you'll indulge me, when I first went to work in public sector, I wanted to rip my hair out because I thought everything was so much harder, and I didn't really understand why. And then after about a year of wanting to rip my hair out, I kind of had this epiphany that I think is worth sharing, and that is, when I worked for a private company, I worked for the CFO. The CEO was right down the hall, we had a board of directors. And we were responsible for, making profits and meeting targets and all that kind of stuff. But basically, we were spending our own money, right? As an organization, we were spending our own money. So I could absolutely call the broker and say, give me 4 quotes, and you know what, I don't want to hear from that insurance company because I don't like them, and but so just give me these 4 and not all 5, and this is what I want it to look like, and then this is the one we're going to buy. And I obviously had approval process within my company, but it was a very short process. I mean, I could buy and implement a benefit in like 2 months.
Right.
And then I went to work for public sector, and I had to write this RFP like I was talking about earlier, and the epiphany that I had, that I wish like everybody could understand about government, is government spends other people's money. You have to do it differently. Now, I'm not saying we can't learn things from the private sector and we can't take private sector things and implement it. We're doing all kinds of Lean Six Sigma stuff to improve processes and all that kind of stuff, but it has to be different, and it should be different because you're spending other people's money. You're not spending your own. Like when I worked in private sector, we were spending our own. So when I had that kind of mind shift, and like I said, it took me about a year of like literally wanting to rip my hair out. But when I had that mind shift that, the reason I have to take this to a committee, and the reason that there has to be this big report, and the reason that it has to go to the board for approval, and is because we're spending other people's money. And these are all checks and balances in that process of spending those taxpayer dollars that you were talking about a minute ago. And then about a little over 8 years ago, I came to work for the district. I knew Susan Strong through a number of, I mentioned earlier, I worked with people like me and other entities, and when I was at the city of Cape Coral, I worked with Susan Strong and other things in the county. And she called me and said, hey, I just want you to know I'm retiring, and they posted my job. And I was like, oh, okay, let me check that out. And was fortunate enough to be hired here. So I've been here about 8 years. So roughly a decade in private sector HR, which included benefits, and then, like sliding in towards 17 years of public sector benefits work. So that's me, which was only part of your question. And then the second question you had was about what does it cost to cover dependents. So we have what's called a 5-tier plan. So employees can elect employee-only coverage, employee spouse, employee child, employee children, or employee family. So obviously there's a different cost for each one of those tiers. And since we were talking about family coverage, and I'm going to have to do math because I told you earlier kind of how our setup was. So I have to reduce it by the amount of the board contribution, which at this time of the afternoon I refuse to do in my head. Okay. So on our most expensive plan, an employee would pay $671.55 a check to have family coverage. On our least expensive plan, that's after the board contribution.
So it's on top.
Right, that's the employee cost, right, which is why I'm having to do the math.
671, and that's for husband and kids.
Right, spouse and children.
10 children.
And children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And would that be like your average tier plan or
So
lowest?
that's the high tier plan.
Oh, okay.
About half our employees are on that plan.
Oh, all right.
The other thing is about 80% of our employees only select employee-only coverage. We only have about 20% of our employees who cover dependents.
Yeah, they can't afford it.
Well, and I don't disagree with you because it is expensive,
Yeah.
but here's kind of the rest of that story. Remember earlier when I said it's all one pot of money, and so the benefit dollars are part of the salary conversation because again, it's all one pot of money. So when 80% of employees are only covering themselves, and now you're bargaining for the money, who's bargaining for the families? That when only 20% of employees elect any of those coverages, to employee spouse, employee child, employee children, or family, is only 20%. So,
I'm
it's,
really glad this came up again, because I wanted to ask about this. So I'm still stuck on that slide that said 18,000 being paid by Lee County for families. And I just wanted, I don't think the 16,000 a year for families is that crazy, frankly. If you look at rates, it could be 1,200 a month.
Right.
Typically.
Sure.
It's maybe 14,000, a year for family coverage if you buy it from Blue Cross or something like that. But what I don't get, maybe I'm not understanding, but how does Lee County is actually paying for families out of tax dollars?
So I
And
have
we
the Lee
can't-
County government, this is page 4 of their open enrollment employee guide for 2019. And it's the BOCC, which is Board of County Commissioners. And for their medical plan, employee plus family, employee pays $160 a month, employer pays $1,530 a month.
Yes.
So how, I don't know.
Well, they're
But
taxing us and paying.
this is their document that
They are
they.
taxing us and we are paying
But
for it.
remember
And we get our
that
money from the state.
But they have flexibility
Right.
in setting their millage rate, and we don't have that.
Right, so how do we fight that?
And when you look at our staff and the number of staff members that have moved over to the county,
Well, yeah, that's crazy.
it
It's
becomes more
absolutely
clear.
crazy. Because you're a Lee County employee here and you're a Lee County employee there. Well, why the heck wouldn't you move to Lee County? When you'd have to pay half your set salary for healthcare.
And one thing I was just like she did is that they set their own millage rate. So we do not, we don't, the state sets ours, they set their own. So if they want to pay that, they just increase their millage rate to do it. We don't have that option.
I wanted to know was, so I'm still stuck on the dependent care. Why, if we haven't bid in so long, why don't we bid in 5-year increments? So basically, every 4 years, we would actually send it out to be bid on, let's say, a 5-year contract. And when we're sending it out, basically, we're saying, we need these, we're looking for these numbers to come down so that we can help with the families, the children, the spouses, rather than $671, I think it was, for a family per paycheck, or $350 some per kids per paycheck. That's really taking a pretty good hit out of it. Why not send it out every 4 years in 5-year increment contracts? And see if maybe we can get that number down.
So when we can certainly bid the insurance. However, constantly bidding the insurance isn't gonna reduce the cost of the claims. The cost of the claims is a function of the utilization and the prices that are being paid for it. So,
we're not firing that 3.5%, is what you're saying, right?
well, and of the total bill, you have a slice that's the administrative services, but that's the smallest piece. The rest of it is all your claims. And whether we pay for it or we give it out to somebody else to pay for it, those claim dollars are what is being paid. And those claim dollars are attached to utilization and to people who are getting services in the community. I don't know if you were familiar with the Tale of Two MRIs as a finance advisory committee. I feel like I need to at least throw that out there. You can go read it. It's part of the challenge, the Tale of Two MRIs. It was a Wall Street Journal article about someone who received care in Lee County from 2 different facilities and the drastic cost difference of those 2 different facilities providing the same service. That's the basis of that article. It is a challenge, and there are multiple ways to attack it. As I said at the beginning, that is something that we are always looking at on the back end. I think you have to be careful of kind of chasing the dollars. So what I mean by that is when I first came here, the kind of the hot new thing in health insurance was on-site clinics. On-site clinic, on-site clinic, on-site clinic. So an on-site clinic can solve problems for you, but what I always say to people is, what problem are we trying to solve? So my counterpart in Citrus County, they put a health clinic in there in the early teens of 2000. I can't remember exactly when, maybe 2012 or 13 or something like that. And so I called them and I said, how's this working for you? They said, oh, it's fantastic. I said, great. How much have you saved? And I said, okay, where did those savings come from? They said, oh, we're rural. We had people who were using the emergency room as a doctor's office. We now are able to provide primary care to our employees, which is much cheaper. And our generic utilization rate was less than 50%, and we're now up to like 60 or 70%. I said, that's fantastic. I absolutely understand how that dynamic in Citrus County would change your healthcare spend. You know what our generic utilization rate at the same time was? 86%. So the savings that I absolutely believe Citrus County received by putting in an employee clinic are not savings we would have received by putting in an employee clinic, because they were solving a problem that we didn't have. So, you know, we are always looking at these options, but we need to look at them not just because, oh well, that county over there saved a ton of money, so let's get one of those because it will save us a ton of money. Well, maybe it will, maybe it won't. You have to look at the numbers and what problem is being solved by that, and were they able to, and are the savings they received over there replicatable with our population, our plan, our dynamic. Because it's not always just because it works somewhere else that it'll work.
But they negotiate, like Blue Cross or United, don't they negotiate a lot of their rates ahead of time? Maybe one of them has negotiated rates and they could drive down the cost. That's what I'm saying, if we're not bidding out, we haven't in all this time, bidding it out, at worst case, we're doing great where we're at, which I don't believe, but in best case scenario, maybe we can drive down those costs, which would then help out the spouses, the families, ultimately the employee. I think all it can do is bring about a positive by bidding it out at this point. I don't see any possible negative whatsoever, other than, I'm sorry, yes, it's a little bit of work.
I don't mind the work.
Every few years, that's it.
Yeah, no, I don't mind the work of taking something to bid, but we have to understand that there's kind of two, we could either bid it out as a whole pot, which is true, and see if somebody will buy it for less than the claims dollars, which I'm sorry, they're kind of dumb if they do, but if they do, sure, we'll take it.
Thank you.
Yeah, but it's also it's the administrative services, which is a part of that, and then it's the claims, which is the other part. So simply taking it to bid isn't gonna change the claims. I'm still gonna have the same 3% of people who are sick as dogs gobbling up my healthcare. Is it possible to change the price we're paying for that healthcare? That's a conversation we have with Aetna on a regular basis. What are our options? Where can we send employees that are cheaper? An example of that is we know it's cheaper to get an MRI at Radiology Regional than it is at Lee Health. It just is, it costs our plan less. So we encourage that through our plan design to drive employees to the lower cost provider, which saves us plan dollars, and we didn't bid. So there's other ways to save money besides simply taking it to bid. Can we take a bid? Sure, we can take it to bid. But there's other ways within the plan design to save money to reduce that claim spend, which is going to reduce the cost over a longer term than simply finding somebody who's gonna give it to us cheaper for a short amount of time.
David and then Sean.
Can you go back to the one that showed all the different types of insurance? First of all, I appreciate your explanation about RFPs and understanding the difference between public and private, because I understand they're different. And we see things from a private standpoint, because that's where we're all from, the private sector. Don't understand the public sector entirely. But what I fail to understand still after the entire discussion is how in 13 or 14 years, medical hasn't come back up again. Because you said, we cycled through all these, and so how from 2006 to 2020, other than the ASO, and that's what I'm talking about, the comparison of self-funding versus fully funded, why has it not come back up? Or in simple question, when does medical cycle back up again? To be looked at the difference between fully funded versus self-funded.
Okay, so.
It seems like we're sold on it being self-funded exclusively.
And so there's a lot of reasons to be self-funded. Am I wed to it? No. Have I administered fully insured plans? I have. At this point, with this plan, with where things are, it would be my recommendation that we stay self-funded. And that is because we have a lot more control over the plan and the networks and direct data from Aetna because we are self-insured. It gives us more control over the plan design, network options, et cetera, under that fully insured. It also allows us to reap the benefits of the impact we're able to make from our wellness program. So those years where we had negative trend, a fully insured company isn't gonna come back and go, woohoo! We were so under target, we made so much money off your account, here's a check. You can negotiate what they call fee sharing or cost sharing, but generally in that type of scenario, they go, thank you very much. And we'll keep all that money that you generated out of your wellness program because you spent less than we projected you were gonna spend. Now there's some floors around that with the ACA, they can't make more than a certain percentage and all that kind of good stuff. But you also have to pay a percentage to have a fully insured plan to be compliant, so it's a little bit of sleight of hand. But Can we put it out to bid to be, either to let people bid either fully insured or self-insured? Yes, we can. What's the cycle on the plan? When we bid it in 2014 for 2015, the contract was a 5-year contract with Aetna. That contract is up 3/31 of 20, and then there are 2 optional 2-year renewals within that contract. I would tell you at this point, because we have to basically be ready to go for open enrollment when the calendar year ends, I don't know that we have enough time to bid it at this point for the new plan year that starts next year. I can certainly take that back and take a look at it. I would prefer, rather than just going straight to a bid, that we further explore that option with our broker consultant to see what options are out there for us. There's other ways to get that data besides just truly taking it to a full bid. But it's absolutely possible. I don't know that I would recommend it in the window of time that we have left to move forward with that for this year. But we absolutely can, and all of our contracts with our insurance companies have termination clauses in them, so even a contract that's in the middle of the contract can be terminated. There's provisions as to how and why and notice and that sort of thing, but.
Sean and then Chris.
So on those 385 employees that are eating a lot of our insurance costs, then, do any of those rise to a disability, or is there something that we can do more with the wellness program, or can we make conditions? I know we're under a collective bargaining agreement. We are not able to connect any performance on their part to their maintenance or them staying on with the district.
So I haven't touched on this, but it might be material to what you're asking. So in the state of Florida, an employee who retires from a governmental entity has the option to maintain that insurance coverage at their cost indefinitely. So on our plan, we have active employees, we have retirees, we also have dependent spouses as well as dependent children. So the 3.5% is of the membership, not necessarily of employees. So that those cost driver folks could be employees, but they could also be retirees, they could also be a spouse, they could also be a child. So then in that case, if it was an employee, does it rise to the level of disability? Probably. If your spend is that high, you've got a lot going on and you're probably not able to come to work. Would it necessitate that? Not necessarily. There's some treatments that would allow for somebody to continue to work that are relatively expensive. But if you're a super high cost employee, then you probably are looking at some sort of a disability type situation. But if it's a spouse, or if it's a child, or if it's a retiree, then obviously whether or not that's a disability would be kind of outside the realm of what we would know because they don't work for us.
Are you able to have a high-risk pool?
So when you say a high-risk pool,
Yeah, put the 3.5% in their own little privately insured and pay the premium on it. Whether the insurance company makes money or not, they take all the risk.
So there's some laws around offering health insurance that you have to offer the same coverage to everyone. So you have to somehow incentivize them to go into that pool. I couldn't just come in and say, the 4 of you are high-risk people, so here's the insurance you get and here's the insurance everybody else gets. So in my last job, I did that. The city of Cape Coral, actually until 2003, paid for retiree health coverage. So I went out and bought them a absolutely fantastic Medicare program that was about half the cost of our healthcare, and I gave it to them for free, and they all ran over there and took it like crazy. It saved us like $400 a person that walked out the door. But the incentive to them was, it was $0 copay. I mean, it was like the richest thing since sliced bread because it was a Medicare plan, so it wrapped around Medicare.
Right.
And it was cheaper. So they self-elected into that other plan, which they could do. You can't tell them they can't be on a plan that we
But
offer.
we could come up with something like that for our retirees.
Right, well, here we don't pay for them, so we only have a handful of them on there. And the ones who are almost all pre-65. Once they turn 65, they go get a Medicare plan because it's less expensive for them. Because they're paying the full premium in retirement. And whereas once you're Medicare eligible, you're kind of double covered if you have our coverage and Medicare, because it's like we both cover hospital, we both cover. So by getting a Medicare plan, you basically buy wraparound, which makes it cheaper.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I hear you guys, I hear what you're saying, and that's the purpose of the committee, right? Do you have recommendations coming out of today's presentation? Do you want to discuss?
Yeah, I was curious. Yeah, I had one thought. I mean, you had showed the different counties up there, and the gentleman from the public comment said something about Osceola County, that they were doing something unique and different, and I didn't see that as one of the counties listed there. I mean, if their costs are significantly less, I mean, what are they doing that we don't know about?
So I've reviewed the contract that Chris spoke about, and it's a full benefit consultant broker. It's about $182,000 contract. And at this point, we have a broker consultant actuary. What are they doing different? Chris and I have met several times on the Health Rosetta options. There's a lot of things out there that are being looked at in healthcare. So one of the options is doing some more direct contracting, which is where we just go directly to certain doctor's offices to provide certain types of care that's high volume. There's options around what's called Medicare Plus, where you select a percentage of Medicare that you want to target in terms of your spend, and you find out who is interested in participating in that. The state of, I believe it was North Dakota, did that very successfully. The state of North Carolina did it quite rockily. If you've been following the state of North Carolina news, they took 700,000 people onto a Medicare Plus plan, and no hospital in the state of North Carolina wanted to agree. So I haven't followed up on that in the last couple of weeks because we've been starting school. But you kind of can't have a health plan if you don't have a hospital that's willing to take your health plan. So, all of those are options that we are looking at, that we're working with our broker and consultant actuary on, that we're working with Aetna on what our options are. And that's part of that, yes, we haven't been to bid since 2015, but that doesn't mean we've been like the Maytag man with our hat pulled down, like going, oh, health plans just go. And, we're constantly looking at what options are available out there to reduce cost spend on the claims, to look at network options. We're doing that as part of our process right now, as we're looking at the health plans we're going to offer for next year for employees. And that's always going on. It's just that we don't always bring that stuff to public meeting until we've had a chance to kind of vet it through and test it out and see where we want to go next. And then we start bringing that stuff to committees like the ITF.
So recommendations, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at that Osceola stuff too. Like, I've got this stuff on my phone, and what I'm seeing is actually a little bit higher per employee cost. It looks like for family coverage there, they're paying $660 a paycheck. So I'd be interested in seeing this contract, but to me, on their website, it looks like employees in Osceola County might be paying more than our employees are paying.
Ours are 630. You said ours are 630.
I have to do that.
We said something in there.
I was 671.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So they're about equal. I would say Osceola County is pretty similar to Lee County. I think in size, I think we're about 12,000 students. We're a little bigger, but I'd love to see their data, because what would be interesting to me when we hear that Osceola information is, what do they pay towards their employee cost? I would have to know that. I mean, we know what we're paying. I'd like to see what what Osceola is paying, and I think that would be a good comparison, because they're similar in size to our county. With I don't know about their staff, but their student is about the same.
But their claims rate could be a lot different.
Right,
Their
yeah,
population
it's
could be
hard,
33
sure.
instead of 48.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So, I mean, it seems to me a recommendation, we should bid this periodically.
Right.
If we can bid it now and we can't get it in place by 2020, we could extend our administrative contract for another year and implement 21, but that would be but the only other issue I would ask was, okay, if you look at every other, 67 school districts, are they all self-insured, every single one of them?
No, because the Franklin County in North Florida, it's only 11,000 people live in the whole county.
But some
So,
of them-
I mean, they're fully insured. I can say that with confidence.
So I mean, if you're telling us maybe because we don't know about it, you're saying, oh, look, county our size, there's slam dunk, no question, you're gonna always self-insure, it's always gonna be cheaper. No one other school district does full coverage, except if they're really small, that's one thing. But if there
Right.
are big ones out there that have full coverage, there's a reason.
So of the 10 largest in Florida, they're all self-insured.
Right.
I mean, all self-insured.
Okay.
The largest holdout on that was Pinellas County, that forever and a day was fully insured, and that was more of a function of their union and the desire to stay there. They just went self-insured last year. So it is.
What we pay.
And they're under us.
Well, that's right around what we are.
Yeah, they're right around where we are.
Anyway, we probably feel more comfortable if we had a bid.
Yeah.
Then at least would make you look good, right?
Well-
It's a lot more expensive.
Well, I mean, and I just want to, and I'm not disagreeing that we should bid insurance periodically. I absolutely agree with that. I just don't want, if I took this to bid every year and did nothing else, that isn't going
But it hasn't
to.
happened in 14 years. That's the part that
Yeah.
just keeps getting beyond me, is
I
that
wouldn't bid
you've
on
said it
it.
a number of times, and you had all these types of insurance up there and said, well, we would be doing RFPs all the time. We're not asking you to do that. But if it hasn't been done in 14 years, how can we not, as a finance committee, say, that's just unreasonable? Like, I get it. Offer it to offer it to the fully funded option and prove it. Prove that,
Yeah,
that
I'm not
self is
disagreeing
working
with
better. Like, our whole thing is, look, when we looked at the Gibson report, there's stuff in there and we go, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? And we're looking for savings for the district. So the point is, if we're wrong, prove it. That's all we're asking for is look, if your program has worked so well, we would love to hear that when you look at the fully funded option, that they come back and say, hey, we're gonna offer you discounts that you didn't even know about, and or I think about the fact of the families. If 80% are employee only, the cost of the addition to add in families, there are cost savings potentially for families of our employees in the Lee County School District if there was a fully funded option. There may be companies out there that offer cheaper family coverage. So if that could bring it down, and we now have 40% of our families covered instead of, because it's cheaper in that option for them than it is under the way that we do it now, then that's a win. That's a win for our employees, and that's what we're looking out for the bottom line, and we're looking out for the employees. That's what we're trying to come up with.
And I want to apologize. I did not mean my comment to be disrespectful at all on the suggestion. And Ms. Patriga asked for you guys to give suggestions. And I guess I just want you guys to understand that we are constantly evaluating ways to save money under the plan. And this is one, and that's true. And we will certainly take that as a recommendation. I just want to be sure that you understand there are other ways to save money in the plan besides bidding. Bidding is an option, absolutely.
Sean and
Yeah.
The proof is in the pudding, you know what I mean? If you have a fully funded option and it's more expensive than the self-funded, then you can go back to the next finance committee that asks you 3 years from now and say, well, you know what, we did it 3 years ago, and we found that our plan is better. We would love for that to be the case, because that means the district is saving money, and Kelly's like, hey, I love it.
Well, and
But we don't know the answer.
there
We
are
don't know the
ways
answer.
for us to explore the fully funded option without going to full RFP as well. So what I would suggest is to start there right now, because I can explore that option without going to full RFP.
When was the last time that was? Okay, I wanted to know.
No, everything I've said before is true, but what I'm saying is I can start exploring that option now before we're to the point where we can actually go to full RFP. We can explore the option and bring back some preliminary information around that. I'm not arguing against going to RFP, please understand that.
No, but my question is, if that's easier to do, and it would give you a good idea of what it would be to go to RFP, then why
Yes.
has it still been 14 years or whatever the number is?
Because most districts our size are self-insured. I mean, you asked that question earlier. Most people with entities our size, when you get to be above a certain number of people, and we are well past that, your claims get very predictable on an aggregate level. You don't know who's gonna get sick that year, but you know if you've got 10,000 people, that this many of them are gonna get sick that year. You don't know which ones those are, but it gets very predictable at a population level. And so that's why larger entities tend to be self-insured, but we can absolutely explore the fully insured option.
Sean, Ramey, and then we still have a motion on the floor.
My only fear with actually going out to RFP right now is that the broker will probably say, oh, I'm gonna put you with the one that I can make the most money with. or make one look worse than the other so that they make more money.
I don't think anybody suggested that.
I know, but
Just making a comment. I'll take it.
But that would be the fear with putting both of them out to the folks that, especially the same company, if we went with Aetna. Let's say we said bid self-insured, ASO only, and fully insured.
Maybe if Aetna thinks we're gonna go, cool, they'll drop their price on their man.
Or they might see that we're able to pay a little bit more and they might raise their ASO $200,000.
Or, sure.
Well, they're not
2
gonna know,
million.
they're not gonna know what someone else is bidding, obviously, so.
Correct.
I think and to my opinion, it has to be a win-win. Either, like David said, they prove that we're paying the least, or we now have options, and options are really good. I believe you need options, that's all.
Really?
When you do open enrollment, and I don't know the laws on this, so I don't know if you're allowed to ask this question, but I would just be curious to know how many of our employees are only choosing to have the coverage for themselves because they can't afford their family or their spouse, because, I mean, $16,000 is a lot of money. That's just what insurance costs, I get it. But I'm just wondering, do we have the numbers on how many of our employees' spouses and children are uninsured, like with no insurance? And is that something we would be allowed to get?
I don't have that data, and I would have to ask if it's something we could even try to collect. We can look, because you don't know what somebody else's options are. So one way we can kind of back into that data is if an employee insures, let's say, family on dental, but they only have employee-only medical. But if let's say their husband has a job somewhere and they have everybody insured over there and they've never insured anybody over here, then I don't necessarily know if they're married or single, if they have kids, if they don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, so we can kind of back into it a little bit, but I don't know that we can ask that. I don't know that we can
you
really
probably
ask.
And I can give you a perspective, I have 2 daughters that both teach. They both, before they went to open enrollment, went outside, they both have families. I have a daughter who's single with 1 child, and I have a daughter who's married with 3 children. They both went outside to look, and nowhere outside, even at Healthy Children or whatever that was, could they find plans that were cheaper than what we had, that were comparable to what the coverage was that they were looking for. So they chose to stay with the district on the plans because of that.
Okay, we do have a motion on the floor. Kenneth, you made a motion.
Oh, just that we go out for 4 RFP on full coverage.
I second it.
Did you want to specify the period? You said within a certain time period. I don't know if we want to put a specific timeline on it, because period could be, to David's point, it could be 13 years, no disrespect,
No, I'd
but it
say
could be
within
13 years.
the next year. I don't know how long does it take to prepare one?
It takes about a full year on a bid cycle, and our tour 1 is our plan year.
That seems to make a lot of sense then.
Within the next year.
Yeah.
Did I get a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion? I know I have one point I would like to see potentially added. We're talking about putting it out for bid within the next year, and I agree with that thought. I think going to what David brought out is thereafter, how often are we going to be putting it out for RFP? Do we want it to be open-ended, or do we want to put in a timeline and say maybe every 5 years thereafter to kind of correspond to
I think it's
what
something.
we have with Aetna right now?
But I think it
Five
depends on
year.
how long they're gonna be.
Yeah.
And let's face it, you could have a Blue Cross Blue Shield that comes in for 3 years, Aetna's is for 5 years. I'd like to see it done on a regular basis. You talked about medical cycling back up on a regular basis, but it hasn't cycled up for 14 years. So that, from that perspective, it would help, but I don't know that I would wrap it into this.
Or
I think
maybe
once we have one now, at least we'd be able to go back and look at it.
Yeah, but I wonder if maybe we put it in, tied into the expiration of the next plan we take, that with the next RFP to be performed with 1 year prior to the expiration date of any plan that we
Well, the
sign.
thing is, we may find that we're crazy for asking for it, because it may be so expensive that she's gonna say, well, you guys made me do this, and not recommendations, because you don't know anything about insurance, right? So we don't know. So I don't think we should put anything long-term. It just seems reasonable, like Dave was saying, that to do it every 15 years anyway, right?
I would say every 3 to 5.
But again, we haven't done it for so long, unless we find that, maybe we'll find that it's a silly thing.
Sean?
She said that she would give us sort of a preliminary where she thinks it might come out.
Yeah,
Is that good enough, or do we really want to send it out for an RFP?
I think the problem with that is we're dealing with what we think we know when we do a preliminary study, right? When the rubber meets the road and people are actually competing for business, that's when they're gonna give you their best price, you know? And or maybe some brokers will have.
Well, we work with a broker consultant actuary, which is Aon, and they work with hundreds, if not thousands, of other entities. So it wouldn't be me going to the companies and asking, it would be me working with Aon to see what other types of responses have been received for other types of business that's been put out that's similar in size to us, et cetera.
Does
So,
Aon know everything?
well, no, nobody knows everything.
Yeah, I mean, why isn't there somebody else that competes with Aon that might have some other ideas that might be better than theirs?
Yeah, Aon does have significant scale. There's been a little bit, just like there's been merger media in the healthcare, there's been merger media in the consultant world as well. There's only a handful of consultants, they've all merged.
So I guess we don't, is there really a cost, other than the cost of putting together the RFP, what's the cost to us of putting one out?
Well, there's manpower cost, and then if we're,
Opportune cost.
I'm sorry?
Just say basically the opportunity cost, which is your manpower, hours. But the possible benefits from it could be astronomical. I mean, at least to the families that are paying that every 2 weeks. The relief that we could potentially provide, I would say it has to be worth it just to either be able to answer the question like David said, yes, we're doing the best we can, or can we do better?
I'll support this motion today. I, for one, would like to see a motion come out of this committee where we're asking the board to up their contribution towards employee benefits. I think we're low on that scale, and I'd like to see more data with comparable counties, but I think we're very low for our area with Lee Health of what we're contributing.
But I was encouraged to see that it had come up from 6,300. I mean, that's a significant jump from 63 to 73. Is there a schedule? Just, do you know offhand, like you guys have coordinated a schedule of increase, a percentage every year, or are you just trying to respond to the rising costs?
It's negotiated every year as part of the salary package.
Okay.
So as we sit down at the table with the unions, we'll discuss it, and it's a combined union discussion, so it's not a discussion with Talc and correct me if I'm wrong, and with Spout. It's combined,
Yeah, it's a
Talc and
joint
Spout are there
session.
along with the district representatives, and they talk about it as a full group.
Okay, we have right now we have two motions on the table.
Mine's not official, I'm just throwing it.
No, I think it's worth bringing up, but I'd like to get through the motion that Kenneth just brought forward. Is there any more discussion just on Kenneth's motion?
Can I understand fully what?
Me too.
So what I
What's
would
the
do is
verbiage?
recommend that the district go out to bid for a fully insured plan within the next year. Is that what?
On medical, on healthcare.
Yeah,
Oh, I know, okay.
should bid out health.
Okay. All in favor?
Wait,
Can we answer one question? If we're talking about bidding it, we could start the process within the next year, but it would be for 2021.
Yeah, I mean, it's only a recommendation, right?
That's fine, as long as we understand the
Because
timeframe, I just wanted to be clear about the timeframe.
Exactly.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Sounds like it's unanimous. Anybody opposed? Okay, unanimous. Remy, did you want to make a motion?
I think it's a good motion.
I think it's a good motion.
Your motion
I think it was a good
because
motion.
here's why. The motion, I think, should be, we should explore ways to provide family coverage more
Right.
affordably for employees. Now, that way could be, for example, I don't understand why if the employee decides not to take coverage, they don't get the
Right.
money.
Right.
Or why they don't have the ability to use that money to pay for their family coverage, unless I'm missing something. But
Yeah,
it's not a cafeteria plan where, right, if I'm an employee,
It's
And
not
I-
a true cafeteria plan.
okay, so if I'm an employee and I say, you know what, don't cover me, I don't want coverage, because I can get it somewhere else cheaper. But give me the money so I can buy my kids' coverage under the new county plan. Are they able to do that?
In order to enroll children on the plan, you have to be enrolled.
Okay, so that's the incentive system that's set up that causes people to take it whether they really need it or not.
Right.
As opposed to using it for something else they may need more. And it just seems weird that the whole way the incentive thing is set up. Also, I don't know about co-pays, how much the co-pays are, you know, there's a whole bunch of stuff to look at as to whether people are incentivized to go get a cheaper MRI, like you're saying, or, you know. So,
They are through the design of the plan.
so you can tell us if you think that's a problem, that people can't afford family coverage, because her motion speaks to that, right?
I would say my motion is speaking to employee retention, and that's comes back to, you know, financial issues for the district. If we're providing good options for our teachers, then I think that's where it comes out
For
of.
all staff, even the bus drivers.
Yeah.
So we all go on, I think Bonnie needs to.
I need to pick my daughter up, I do apologize.
And I'm sorry, I forgot, I meant to tell you all that she needed to leave by 6 o'clock, but I think we can talk these recommendations through without.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
Bonnie.
Thank you guys so much for your time, I appreciate it, it was great speaking with you. And if there's anything I need to follow up on, Kelly, if you'll just let me know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think Kelly can probably speak to this better than I can, but I think that what we're talking about here is bargaining. Like, I think that the employees decide, and what I heard Bonnie say is that only 20% of our employees want family coverage, so they're not well represented in the negotiating process, but that's kind of how.
Wait, did you say want or pay for it? I mean, the difference is,
Right.
I might want it, but I can't afford $671.
But what I'm
Nobody's
saying is that-
negotiating in the
Exactly.
collective bargaining unit.
They don't have representation in the collective bargaining unit. I'm not sure that that's something the board can do. Like, if we increase our contribution to health insurance, that decreases another benefit that they're getting, likely pay. So I'm just not sure that this is
I
something.
would agree, and so remember too, there's TALC and SPALC representatives on the insurance task force as well. So they're hearing about the insurance on a monthly basis, they know where it is, they know what's going on with it, and they're the same ones at the table negotiating. So they have some idea, and they're supposed to be negotiating for their, you know, the group, so I would think that if that had been an issue for them, they would have brought that up at the table.
But I hear that's an issue from almost every teacher I talk to, and we've got people in the room saying it is. I understand that it's a bargaining issue. I don't think anybody would reject the board saying we're now going to contribute 9,000 instead of 7.
I'm not
That's a millage.
disagreeing with that, but
But then it comes out of another
I would
benefit.
say, if I'm a teacher and that
One buy.
2,000 is either in my paycheck or in my benefits, I'm gonna want it in my paycheck. Because then I have more options of what to do with it. So, and that's what it comes down to there, and remember, there's one pot of money. It's not like we have all kinds of money to do, and that's what they have to decide at the
So
table.
have the bargaining, the union bargaining ask for it to be able to have it in their paycheck rather than they choose not to take the insurance? They haven't asked for that?
Well, that would be a different type of insurance.
Right, but they still.
It would be a true section 125.
Because I've heard there's two people say, well, they tell me I make, 50 grand, but I never get it. And if I didn't take the health insurance, I wouldn't get it. So I know that the published pays are including all this healthcare knowledge. So why would 100% take it?
And if we're able to get a savings by taking this RFP, why couldn't that be passed on so that we can lower those per paycheck costs? And when you're looking at those numbers, trying to pick it out, it's pretty eye-opening. I'm sure you've done it, when it comes down to, are you gonna take for your family, you're gonna try to find it on the open market? Is it cheaper to put $650 a month aside for if your kid gets sick, for $100 to take them to the doctor, and hope that the kid doesn't break their arm or their leg? Or to take the small school policy at the school instead of paying $650, $300 and some per pay period? It's definitely something, I think we really need to entertain this. I think maybe it might not really be on the right track, but I think it can be, I think we can accomplish that goal possibly through this process of looking at other options that haven't been explored in years. That's why all of us, our eyes are popping out over here, I think.
And I think the other issue that she kept bringing out is she keeps talking about the actuary. And the concern I have, she said our average workforce is 48 years old and female. She said if we insure 20-year-old females, it's gonna be expensive because they get pregnant. If we insure 20-year-old males, our insurance costs are cheaper. I think we need to get a better understanding of the demographic based on age, family, health history, and that's gonna be garnered through that health analysis that they do. I think we better get a better understanding of what our workforce is and really see, because she also just confused the daylights out of me at the end when she was talking about retirees.
Right.
She talked about 13,000 employees, and then suddenly retirees are being factored in to the equation. Then even if we go back to her number,
Yeah.
the other thing that confused me was the $300 and some odd dollars per pay period. Well, if you're a bus driver, she said there's 20 pay periods.
Yes,
If you're a
so
school
it's
teacher,
more in there.
if you're a school teacher, it's 24 pay periods. So is a bus driver contributing less, are we contributing less towards a bus driver?
No,
Based on that,
She said they drew it up.
They just divided up by 20, 7,600 by 20.
They divided
But I think-
7,360 by
Yeah,
20,
So
instead
she
of by
was using
24.
the 300 based on the
That's
20, I calculated, based on 24 pay periods.
Correct, yeah. But I think the retirees thing, if I understand it, is that they pay the premium of 7,600, but they probably cost a lot more than 7,600 because they're skewed higher, older. So if you could move them out of the plan,
Right.
your overall plan cost would go down.
Yeah, which has been the whole problem with the Affordable Care Act. It was all based on younger people contributing, paying their premium.
Right.
But we're never gonna have to go see a doctor because
Right.
younger folks tend to be healthier. And as the population ages, it's gonna cover them. And what ended up happening is the younger generation said, I'll go without insurance, I'm healthy, why should I pay a premium when I'm not going to the doctor? And I'm wondering if we're putting ourselves in that same position by not really understanding the demographic of our workforce. And I also thought that Sean's comment should be explored further, and I would love to have a motion taken on that, which is understand whether we can pool those high-risk
Oh, yeah.
individuals
Great idea.
into an insurance pool. Just because we haven't exported, when I worked in private sector, and this goes back to 2002, we had one individual, we were 100+ employees, we had one individual, her husband needed a heart transplant. We called in the bionic man, and he was also the $1 million man because that's how much it cost, and we were self-funded. So, and it's basically the same thing. 1% of our employees was the vast majority of the insurance costs. We're seeing here, it's 3-point-some-odd% of our employees is the vast majority of our insurance costs, which is determining what our insurance premiums are gonna be. So Sean, I don't know if you wanna make that.
Mr. Chairman, I've got to get mine at 6:30, so I've got to go. Sorry.
Okay.
But I will take your recommendation to
Yeah, I would put that into a motion as to look at a
Thank you.
similar equal medical plan for high-risk individuals.
Did I get a second on
I'll second it.
that? Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And I'll also make the
Wait, 1 second. So you want to recommend looking at a pool for the high-risk population into a separate plan?
into a separate equal plan.
And I think that's a strong component to it, Kelly, to make sure that she understands. We're not trying to give them lesser coverage because they're high risk. We want to give them comparable coverage to other employees.
And even incentivize them to move over like
Yes.
Right. And you know, let's look at it this way, if it's 55% of our overall costs, right? We could self-insure for the 96.5% instead of 3.5% that we've offloaded that risk. And you know what? We'll pay a higher premium. If it cost us, instead of 44 million, let's say it cost us 50 million for the high-risk pool. So what? The amount of savings we're gonna get for self-insure, the other 96.5% is way more than $6 million. So I say, offload that risk. I was wondering the exact same thing before you brought it up, so I think it's a fantastic idea.
Enemy?
Could we see his presentation on Osceola County? I mean, could we get that information?
You can make that as a request of the committee, as long as everybody on the committee,
Okay.
and if it can be forwarded to Barb, absolutely. Sure. Is the committee in favor of that information being
I'm in
provided?
favor of receiving it.
Okay.
More than we did walking in here.
I would also like to make a motion that we do get a demographic listing of all of our employees and where they work and just demographics, age, sex, race, sort of, because that's good to know, period, to know what our workforce looks like. And
You know, there's find savings that way too, by knowing people we actually are working with.
absolutely, and
Do we really have the ability to analyze that?
they have to file a report with the state every
So I
single
mean, what
year.
would we do with it? We don't know enough about it.
It's information that they should be that
Well, they should have
benefit
it.
should have, and they should actually be doing an analysis. I think that would be great, piggyback on your recommendation, Ken, of the RFP. I think if they do that analysis, and I understand Aon, it seems to be one of the survivors in the
Yeah,
consulting
we're gonna
world.
get that.
We're gonna get that information, but
I
I just don't know
know
that
whether, whether they have that or not, why do we wanna put that on and to give us that information? What are we gonna?
I want to know because it has a much larger financial impact. If an African-American student is learning from an African-American teacher or a Spanish student is learning from a Spanish teacher, there are certain things and efficiencies that we can get out of having a teacher staff that looks like our student population. And with 68% of our students being Black or brown, it would benefit us physically to have more Black and brown teachers teaching them at a much faster clip at a much lower
What's
cost.
that have to do with insurance?
From a finance, because it is part of the census, it is part of the.
You're trying to ask for information that's unrelated to the insurance discussion, because you have another issue you want to look at as a different issue.
Well, I want to look at the age of the folks too, because if we can do different pools with different age groups, that would be a benefit as well.
Right now, we have a motion on the table. Is there anybody who wishes to second it?
The census on the employee age, race, sex.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? I'm fine. I am a little at a loss as far as benefits. I understand where Ken's coming from as relates to the race, other than certain races and certain religious groups have certain health issues more than others. That would be the only thing I can see that really ties into.
I didn't want to make
understand what
it
you're
too much
saying.
different than what we report to the state on
I
an
think it's
annual
age.
basis.
Yeah, it's age and sex.
I think also, on top of that, I think we also need to confirm with council whether or not we are allowed to have that information provided to us.
Yeah,
I would disagree with that.
I'm against it. You know, I like it.
I agree.
I'm an A.
I'm an A on that one. Sean and I usually agree, that's why I have to come back. I like you, man, but now. I like you unconditionally, but just now.
Raise your 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 3 against.
Opposed.
Opposed. 3 opposed.
I'm more for the age of the sex.
That's where I am. If they both raise that, I'm good.
What you're going to do with it. I mean, like,
We're
so
thinking-
it's a lot of work for people to pull this stuff together if we really aren't going to look at it to do some analysis for something. So,
If one age group, a specific age group is costing us a lot more than a specific sex, couldn't they bid out the insurance in pools, basically?
I think we're gonna get that information through the RFP.
We're gonna get it through the RFP, and secondarily, for his other motion, which had to do with the, getting that group of 3.5 and a catastrophic type policy, that's gonna cover that as well. So I don't think that the other information will give us anything that those two things that we're requesting right now aren't already gonna give us.
And that's why I'm trying to support with Kelly, it's like a lot of work to put this together, for what reason, we don't have even the.
Well, I don't want them to do anything other than when the annual state required information comes up to add the one that may not be included in that report. Because I know you have to do male, female, and race. on that report. The only thing that is not on there is age.
Did you want to know where they work too? On one?
Not on the actual motion.
Okay.
Can we table the motion?
Well, it's already been voted on, right?
It's already been
Right.
voted
It already
on.
passed, right?
4-3.
I have just on this 306 number that she was throwing out that goes into the pay periods, like I mean, I understand somewhat of the bargaining aspect and stuff. I still don't think this committee is out of line to advise the school board to pay more for teachers. But I guess I'm at a loss that it's equal for everyone, no matter what your job title is, no matter your years with the district. Counties, I know, have tiers when you've been with them so long, or certain things they pay higher percentages.
Yeah, usually it's, you have to do it equally for everybody.
I think if we find a
By law,
savings, because the money has
It's
to
part of the
come from
health care
somewhere.
law.
We could find a savings, let's say through the RFP, then maybe maybe the board would consider at that point using that savings towards adding it into healthcare costs or lowering the costs for their families or the kids, adding someone's kids on. I think that's where we should concentrate, because if we say, hey, we found you this savings, we're requesting that this is where the money's being put towards, so ultimately their decision, maybe they'll be more inclined to go for that.
It's gonna have to be bargained.
Yeah, that in the same way,
That's
yes.
really what it is, what it comes down to in the end. This is bargain, we may find the savings, but now that then gets bargained, and the organization may be completely related to what we just said. It may go universal.
But the board could up their contribution amount based on our recommendation, and that's gonna fare well in bargaining.
Well, that's it, they're not going to,
That's-
because it's
that's
gonna
all
come out
bargaining.
as something else. I mean, the whole point of them bargaining and being involved in the insurance task force is that, why are they gonna up it from 7,500 to 9,000 if it's gonna remove other benefits? That it doesn't make any sense. If it's bargained for, those are the people that are fighting on behalf of them. How is us recommending to the board to give more money toward that when there's so many other things that are out there? How would that benefit anybody?
Because I just think it's like one of the number one complaints teachers have is their benefits.
Well, then have them complain to their union and tell their union to negotiate better.
Nothing's
us-
happening now.
But then
Right.
it's,
I've got
that's a
Kevin
different
Daly's
conversation.
And those, I mean, they can go beyond the bargaining group themselves,
Right.
and that's an important thing, and they don't feel like their voices are being heard, they have that option as well.
You're bargaining a series of different things, you're making choices.
That's right.
But it all comes down to-
Exactly, it still comes down to choice, right?
Right.
I think this all comes back to what we brought up to our attention about doing an analysis of the plan. The one question we didn't ask of her, and I would really like to know, she said our plan expires in 5 years and a 2-year renewal.
Yeah.
I'd like to know what it's renewed at. Well, she said that this plan expires 2020, March 2020.
There's an optional.
And then there's an option for a 2-year renewal, but at what rate?
Probably at the same rate.
Probably the same rate, but I can ask her.
I don't like to assume anything because it's rare that somebody's gonna be that nice and say, yeah, we negotiated this 5 years ago, and at 2020 costs, we're not gonna account for inflation in there. They're gonna account for some rise in costs.
Yeah.
And if they don't, then maybe it's a shame on them, like what happened with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they'll come back and say in 2 years, yeah, we made a big mistake, you guys got over on us, congratulations.
Or if we have significant savings,
Yes.
because we offer a wellness plan, which could be the issue too.
Any other motions from the group?
Motion to adjourn.
Very good, entertain a second.
Make a motion of tonight,
That was
I just want to make one comment, just listening to what she had said before. We may have a problem statutorily dividing up, because she mentioned doing something for one group that we don't do for the other. The only way around that possibly could be let's say I join as an employee this year, and after a year's time, there's an evaluation as to whether I'm a high risk or a low risk, and you offer me the option of doing that. But I think, like you're saying, the insurance, statutes and all that, they prohibit you saying to me, we're gonna put you in school.
Right.
Yes.
We can incentivize that change, like she
Yeah,
said.
some type of incentive, but, and I do agree with, several of you who talked about the teachers. That's what we hear, and the teachers and the bus drivers all the time. And especially thinking about the bus drivers, they're on the 20, but during the summer, they don't pay. I mean, it just kind of, I think they have a gap insurance or something, I don't know. But I mean, there's basically the question on the table is those that cannot afford to get the health care that they possibly need. So, thank you for letting me be here.
Sure, thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Okay, we are adjourned.
You
wanna have the honors of stop?
I'm gonna stop my
Looked like we were.
I'm done.
You didn't reapply?
No,
Oh, my
man.
goodness.
Take care.